What's going on, guys? Manny here. I wanted to make a quick DIY episode on designing footholds for your climbing, training, bouldering, spray wall, whatever you may have, for cheap and with pretty simple methods pretty quickly. And on top of that, these footholds will not only be suitable for climbing with climbing shoes, but also without climbing shoes. Now, climbing without climbing shoes, a lot of you may say, what kind of new hippie trend stuff is that again? I personally tried this, style of climbing, or this way of climbing, if you want to call it like that, back when I was coming back from a longer break during summer. And I really could notice the difference between being in and out of climbing shoes again. And I noticed that especially training without climbing shoes had a couple of advantages. First of all, it makes your feet a lot stronger, especially your toes, and here especially your big toe. I could notice this back when training on the Andromeda wall, when I still was climbing in socks actually, because for hygienic issues, you can't really climb bare feet in a climbing gym. But anyway, I was climbing with socks, and a lot of these small wooden screw-ons that I could not step in the beginning became steppable after 2-3 weeks of trying this repeatedly, because I got the strength in my toes, the tension in my toes, and also the toes built up this kind of specific callus that was needed to kind of get my force on these holds, so to say. And then after these weeks I could actually step them, and we know that from people like Charles Albert and stuff like that, you can actually perform pretty damn hard without climbing shoes. And it didn't really cost me a lot of performance in climbing shoes as well. I tried bouldering outdoors again, where performance matters to me, where I still put climbing shoes on, and I had, if anything, positive effects, because why would additional toe power not be helpful in climbing shoes as well, right? And secondly, obviously, it spares climbing shoes time, right? And we are out of the climbing shoe. This has not only positive effects on the climbing shoe health and duration, the prolongation you can use the climbing shoe, but also it has positive effects on the health in general of your feet. I particularly myself am not really, struck by this issue, luckily, but I've heard from a lot of people that they struggle with health issues with their feet from being in climbing shoes a lot of the time, from the foot arch, toe formation, kind of fungus and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely a good thing to keep climbing shoe time limited. And thirdly, which is also pretty significant to me personally, it kind of lowers the threshold for training actually. Because imagine just getting the chalk bag out and starting, There's no need for cramping your toes into a small little shoe, no need for warming up shoes maybe, no need for slipping in and out all the time during the training session. You just grab your chalk bag, chalk up, and start your session. And this way the training feels more like hangboarding or even camper sporting to me, where you don't really need climbing shoes. What for? And it makes the climbing threshold lower. That way, the training threshold, it makes training more accessible. And in the end, you might get the one or the other session done, which you wouldn't have gotten done if you had also had to put on climbing shoes, Enough preaching, let's create some holes. Now, crucial to this build is the starting material, which is wooden balls. Like this. This is beech. 35 millimeters in diameter. For my foot size, for my toe size, this seems to be just the right size, so that stepping is still possible, but yet quite challenging, especially in a 45-degree overhang like this. I got these from the internet. Maybe I try to put a link down below. I highly recommend you use sound hardwood balls. There's also a lot of these, pearls, which you can use for, making necklaces and stuff like that, which have a huge central tunnel through them, which is, I think, something that comes up during the manufacturing process. It works with those as well, but the chance for splitting is a lot higher, and it's a little bit more tricky to place the screws. So I really highly recommend to use sound hardwood balls. Let's go through the working steps.
There are three main challenges to this build. Number 1, creating a flat surface to prevent wiggling. Number 2, setting screws, or rather pre-drilling tunnels in such a way that later everything will be stable and won't twist on the wall. And lastly, the most challenging one, achieving all that in such a way that holes won't split when you screw them on tightly. Because let me tell you, these balls split very easily, especially if they are small like these. Again, I'm using 35mm diameter here. As you can see, I tried two different approaches to overcome these challenges. First one was one long center tunnel for stability and one shorter off-center tunnel to prevent twisting. The other one was two medium off-center tunnels, which performed significantly better in terms of splitting during the mounting process. Hence, I'm hopefully gonna save you some time and trial and error by only showing you the workflow for this approach. Start by simply laying down your rasp or sandpaper. Rasp will be a lot quicker, and sand off a flat surface of around 20 mm diameter. Here the tricks already start, because you don't want to create that plane just anywhere on the ball. You want to have it parallel to the wood grain circles you should be able to see on the outside. That means you have 2 spots available on each ball where the plane would be ideal. Another tip here, once you identified where to sand the plane, sand perpendicularly against the grain. This will make sanding much easier and faster, and will therefore lead to a much plainer surface, which is good because that means less wiggling and an easier mounting process in the end. Now it's time to pre-drill the 2 tunnels. Not as simple as it looks. Yet again, the positioning of these 2 tunnels on the plane is crucial. You want to place them close to the border of the plane at maximum distance from each other. Also pay attention to drilling down perpendicular to the plane so that you don't end up in the middle of the ball, nor too much at the edge of the ball on the other side, because that would lead to splitting when mounting. Also, and this is very crucial, you have to pay attention to the wood grain again. You don't want to have both tunnels in line with the grain, because then the splitting force of both screws will add up and you will get a guaranteed split when mounting. Ideally, the line formed when connecting both tunnel entrances is perpendicular to the grain, whose direction should be indicated by dark streaks. Now you can proceed to drilling the drop downs for the screw heads on the other side. Don't go too deep, maximum 2/3 of the total diameter, or you will weaken the wood so much that again the chance for splitting becomes higher, but also go deep enough so that screw heads will sink in completely and won't irritate your toes later when stepping. Here's the finished result compared to the other approach I mentioned in the beginning, which split as you can see, and here's one of the pearls that I was talking about, split as well. So I had to go through quite a bit of collateral damage to arrive at the workflow I showed you, from around 90% of these footholds splitting in the beginning down to around 10% splitting. So let's mount them. There's no need to go super long on the screws if you executed everything else accurately. Usually you'll still end up with one longer and one shorter tunnel, means you get one longer screw and one shorter. It needs to be 2 though, or you'll get twisting of the foothold obviously, especially on a smooth background like I have it. Now take the hold and drive the screw into the hold first. Now hold the plane down to your wall and keep driving the first screw in until it bites. Usually there will be a gap between the hold plane and your wall because it took the screw a few turns until it bit. That's why you go back out again now, to let the hold come close to the wall again, and only now you will go back in and screw the hold down. If you don't do that, you will either split the hold by compressing it between its own thread and the screw head, or you will ruin its thread integrity, which is bad for stability later on. This is what it should look like mounted. Now even if stuff splits, that doesn't necessarily mean that the material and work is lost forever. If you have some wood glue, you can try gluing the pieces back together, let them dry and mount them again. I'd say in 50% of the attempts it works. Here's some rescued collateral damage. So let's test them. As you can see, I mounted some of these holes down at the kicker. This is the start of a 7A boulder, essentially one of the very first boulders that I created on this wall. And as you can see, it's just amazing how the toes, really actively can grab those balls to get the first move done, so to say. Here's another problem. I think this is 7A as well, showing again how, especially the big toe here is very active. And you very often have to compress the hold essentially between your big toe and your second to biggest toe, whatever that one is called, maybe the index toe. And just for the first few moves, just for the first or the second move, and then you basically already can step up onto the starting holds of the problems, on my wall that is. And here again, showing how it works in the overhang, just the same way, big toe grabs the hold. And it's not that easy. It looks pretty easy here because, I have a little bit of practice with that already, but it's actually pretty hard. And it kind of trains your foot, it trains your toe strength, especially the toe strength of your big toe. Here, a beautiful example showing that you can also use technique very nicely on these kind of footholds. And here I'm stepping an old foothold actually, which is super good and has a sharp corner on it, and that's why I exchanged then in the end all of my footholds with these new awesome ball footholds. And that's how to create simple, cheap DIY footholds for your home climbing wall. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Hopefully it spares you some climbing shoe time and maybe also some foot health. That would be great. Leave your comments and likes down below. That's highly appreciated. And I'll see you soon in the next one, my friends. Bye. Stay strong.